Previously on The Business.
The Business this morning with Kriya and Ian. Okay, let's turn our attention now to matters about property. And an article which came out earlier on today makes mention of the fact that residential property specifically is potentially looking a little bit more valuable than it did a few years ago. And people are starting to buy houses. Now, I know absolutely nothing about the property market other than I want it to go up and I want my house to be able to be more valuable when I want to sell it. Let's talk to John Loos, who is an economist with FNB. John, first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining us on The Business this morning.
Thank you, Ian.
It's great to have you here. How is this article going to affect all of us? Because a lot of people are saying that property prices are on the up, things are looking good. In a time of doom and gloom where all of us are having to watch our pennies, perhaps our property is going to be worth a bit more. Other people are saying that's absolute nonsense and nothing's happened. What's the story?
Well, yeah, Ian, I think, some people can exaggerate it a bit. I think where some people get fooled is they fail to understand the concept of real terms. If we look at the FNB House Price Index, we've seen average price growth over the last year, from September last year till September this year, being about 6.6%. Now, that's a bit of an improvement from where we were a few months ago, and it's been gradually ticking up, that growth rate. But it's more or less in line with consumer price inflation and wage inflation and all those nice things. So in real terms, really, where we are now is just a very stable situation. We're just keeping pace with the general inflation. So no, I don't subscribe to the view that the property market is very strong. I call it a very stable market now, just treading water in real terms. That's where we are. And if we look back to about 2007, the peak in real prices, again, if we adjust for consumer price inflation, we're probably about 18% down still. So although the market has improved mildly since the recession of 2008, 2009, and interest rates have come down, so the demand has ticked up a bit. Where we are now is not significant real price growth.
Can I go back because I'm very interested to find out where this trend has gone. As you mentioned, 2007, 8, 9, 10, around there before it started to taper off, there was a massive housing bubble. Mm-hmm. People were paying loads of money for residential properties. People were buying rental houses, and it was just grab as much as you can. What happened after that to leave us where we are today? And the follow-on to that question is, do you think it's going to go back up at some point, and if so, when?
Yeah, up until about 2007 or so, prices had skyrocketed since the beginning of last decade. There was a massive consumer boom simultaneous to a massive property demand boom, and because of a limited supply of property, we can't import houses like you can import cars to satisfy demand. So there was a shortage of supply in the boom years, and prices rose by a few 100%. What happened then, though, was the household sector became highly indebted. The household debt to disposable income ratio, as we call it, rose quite dramatically over the course of last decade up until about 2008, and eventually it got to a stage where households could just not carry on growing their borrowing by the same pace. And the whole market then tapered off. Of course, we had the global economic crisis, we had a global recession, a local recession, a lot of job loss, and of course that imposed a lot of financial pressure on the household sector, and so residential property demand slumped. Of course, there was interest rate hikes up to 2008 as well. We then had price decline round about 2008, 2009. And then when interest rates got cut in 2009, we started to gradually recover, but the emphasis is on gradual. And over the past couple of years since then, demand for residential property has ticked up moderately. Gradually, it's eaten up the oversupplies of property on the market that existed. And so we've got into a more balanced situation, and that's led to a renewed house price growth in nominal terms, but as I say, it isn't extreme because the household sector is still highly indebted. There is still a lot of financial pressure around, and so the best we do now is more or less keep track with inflation.
I mean, there was an opportunity, as you've correctly put, in 2007, 2008, when that boom was happening, to get a great return on your money. If you bought a property, potentially if you got a good deal, it's not what you buy the house for, but what you sell the house for. But potentially you could have made a lot of money if you were a seller. Now, in the situation that we're in today, I mean, my untrained mind, and please, John, I'm no economist, I'm a DJ, but what I do know is that I want to get the best return on my money. So here's my question to you. Do I put that into property? And if so, what property? Not residential, not commercial, industrial property perhaps? Where would I look if I had a bit of spare money lying around and I wanted to play in the property market? Is it residential that I should be looking at?
Well, I think it's a tough one at the moment. Commercial property is certainly not setting the world alight, and obviously for an individual to invest in a commercial property and directly manage that property is very complicated. So, the best you can probably do is, as a normal individual, is we go the listed property route, and there's the JSE, the growth points, and the redefines, and you invest that way. I suspect the yields there aren't particularly wonderful at the moment because listed properties also had quite a price boom in recent years. So it's probably much of a muchness. Do you go listed property and indirectly into commercial, or do you go residential? But if one does go residential property, you're probably looking at better yields. I think it's important to realize that one must not think just capital growth and really the seasoned investor looks more strongly at the income stream that generates relative to the price he's going to pay. And you probably find, if you look at the yield, as they call it, which is the rental income relative to price, you'd get higher yields or more attractive yields if you went into the smaller sort of sectional title type properties, largely in your urban areas where there are big rental markets. That's probably the best place to play in residential property at the moment.
Okay, well, that's a very solid answer. I don't know. I mean, I would probably look at equities at the JSE rather myself at the moment, but that's just me. That's a personal thing.
Are we seeing the gradual increase? Is it because South Africans are becoming a little bit more, if you want to say, thrifty with their spend when it comes to property?
Well, it's tough to say. Look, I think a good few people had a few hard knocks in and after the recession, so some may have become a little bit more conservative in their borrowing and manage their finances better. But certainly if we look at the big numbers which the Reserve Bank publishes, unfortunately there's not much sign that the household sector has improved its savings rates dramatically. It's still a very poor savings culture that we've got here. And if you look at that debt to disposable income ratio, it came down something from about 83% to 75% round about 2008 to 2010, 11 thereabouts, but it started going up again, and we know about the unsecured credit boom in recent years. So it still seems as though households will borrow too much if they're allowed to, and that is a cause for concern. We've got to change this culture into one of higher levels of saving and possibly lower levels of borrowing.
All right, John, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this morning on The Business with FNB. I really appreciate the input that you were able to give us and give us a bit more of an idea as to what's going on. Thank you so much.
The Business. Weekdays 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on bulls.co.za. Brought to you by FNB Business Banking.